Morning, Mr. Myer. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, involves a podcast with Randall Hunt to talk about SpaceX, AWS, MongoDB, NASA, and his new role at Caylent. You have 48 hours to recruit Randall and meet online to record your assignment. As always, should you or any member of your team be caught or forced to sing Baby Shark, the secretary will disavow all knowledge of your actions. And Mr. Myer, the next time you plan to be at a summit, please be good enough to tell us. This message will self-destruct in 5 seconds. What does SpaceX, MongoDB, AWS, NASA, or even Facebook have in common? I'm sure there's a punchline in there somewhere. That's right, our next guest has led software and developer relations teams at all of them and is highly experienced in the developer community. Joining us today is Randall Hunt, VP of Cloud Strategy and Solutions at Caylent and the developer experience. Before I bring Randall onto the show, don't forget to hit that like, subscribe, and notify. All right, it's time to bring Randall on. Please join me in welcoming Randall Hunt to the podcast. Randall, thanks for joining me.
It's awesome to be here on the John Myer podcast. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm glad you had a few moments to join me for the show. I want to talk about some of your experience, going from like AWS to Caylent. And in fact, let's talk about that right now. I believe you and I were at AWS right around the same time. What were you doing there?
We were indeed. So when I was at AWS, I had a couple different roles. I started out doing some software engineering. So my first time at AWS, years and years ago, I was doing some software engineering, and then I moved over into a developer advocacy role. Back then, we called it technical evangelism. You can kind of argue about the difference between the two. One is bi-directional and one is kind of purely outbound. But really, it was just a title. We did all the functions that you would expect in a developer relations team. And then from there, I became a solutions architect for a while. And I worked with the Amazon Connect team. I worked with a lot of the API and AI services over the years, SageMaker and Recognition and Transcribe and Translate and Comprehend and all that good stuff. And then I left AWS. I went to Facebook for a while, where I led the PyTorch team, the open source side of that. And then I came to, I did a couple startups and some random stuff. And then I arrived at Caylent. So, weird stuff in between where I wasn't sure what I was doing. And then now I'm at Caylent, which is home.
So we fast forward to Caylent. But before we get to what you're doing at Caylent, let's talk about AWS. I believe you have an interesting story, and we can't say her name, so we're just going to use the word Echo.
Right. So we'll say Echo instead of using the term that invokes the things.
Yes.
So in case anybody's got their speakers on. So okay, my second time interviewing at Amazon, Echo had just come out, really. Like, it had just become popular. So I think it originally came out in like 2014 or 2015, something like that, but it had not reached a level of popularity until, say, 2016. So I was interviewing, and I was coming back to AWS, and there was this opportunity where you could build custom Echo skills, and a lot of the meeting rooms at Amazon had Echoes inside of them. So the problem with building these custom skills is that you could not include the word Amazon or Amazon Web Services because those were kind of reserved words. So I just included it with a different spelling. And so then when I said in part of the interview process is you end up giving this large presentation to an audience, and some people are in the room, some people are on Chime or whatever. And I ended up saying at the end of the interview, hey, Amazon, or, Echo, ask Amazon if they should hire Randall Hunt. And then it gave, it triggered a Lambda function, which gave the response to everyone in the room. And it's like, absolutely, you should hire Randall Hunt. And I just remember watching everyone in the interview being like, okay, well, I have no further questions.
That'll like silence the room. So did you bring your own Echo or did you integrate? Like, how did you get, okay, so you brought your own that already had it set up.
Yeah, not only did I bring my own, I actually published the skill so it was able to be installed. And I got to the meeting room before anybody else, and the recruiter made the mistake of leaving me in that meeting room. So
Did you, oh, so you got it installed on that
yeah,
right away?
so
Oh,
I
that, oh.
I totally hacked that whole process, and so I brought my own as backup in case it didn't work. But
Yeah.
the crazy thing was they stopped you from reserving words that had anything to do with Amazon, but they didn't look at the misspellings of the word. So I found if I put two A's in Amazon, it worked just fine.
Oh, so you hacked the process and the skill set. Oh man, extremely hired on the spot.
They have since patched these vulnerabilities. So this was many years ago. This is like 8 years ago now. So keep that in mind.
Anybody listening to the show, if you're thinking about trying this out, I would like you to comment down below if you found other variations that worked. I think that will be one of the things I might have to try with mine. We can't say her name because on my desk and it triggers a bunch of stuff, but maybe you'll find out later what it does.
We'll see.
Randall, well, before I get to Caylent, you did a thing at, what was it? SpaceX, MongoDB. Apparently you're well known in the MongoDB community. You want to share some of that?
Oh, I mean, I was a baby engineer back when I was at MongoDB. So my background was I was studying, physics and a little bit of computer science, and I was doing mass properties and materials engineering at NASA as an intern, and then as like a full-time co-op kind of deal. And then I went back to college after a year of working with NASA, and I hated it. And I got in my car and I drove to New York, and I ended up meeting this guy named Elliot Horowitz at a hackathon. And Elliot Horowitz was the co-founder of MongoDB. And he was like, well, you should, just come build cool stuff. So I did that. I went to MongoDB, had a great time in New York City. Saw that company grow from a very small number of people into an extremely large number of people in a very short period of time. Then I hopped to AWS for a year and change. And right when I went to AWS, I also got this offer from SpaceX. And because I had already said yes to Amazon, I felt I didn't think it was like appropriate to go and say to Amazon, oh, sorry, I got a better offer. Talk to you later. So I stayed at Amazon for a year, and then I got the SpaceX gig, and I was like, okay, I've got to do this. I've got to try it out. This is exciting. And SpaceX was awesome. It was truly just one of the best experiences of my career. I got to work on the continuous integration and deployment of the rocket hardware and software stack. Got to sit in mission control a couple times. I was there when we landed the first rocket, and I was also there when we got kicked out of bars in El Segundo for violating fire code after we landed the first rocket. It turns out if it says maximum 45 people occupancy and you somehow have 200 people in the bar, that the fire department gets called. And then we tried to get the fire department to party with us, and that didn't go very well.
That's right. Get them on your side by drinking a little bit, give them a couple beers.
Yeah. And I mean, MongoDB was great. I would really say that's where I got my chops as an engineer. I learned operations, I learned C++, I learned Python, I learned front-end dev, worked on the SpiderMonkey JavaScript engine, worked on the V8 JavaScript engine, learned a lot about distributed architectures and kind of networking constraints and partitions and the way that things fail at scale. I think MongoDB was probably one of the best places in the world to be at that time, because they were on the cutting edge of these large scale distributed systems and serving real workloads. They had this customer, I think it was Disney or Marvel Comics or something, that literally had 1,000 node cluster, and people just weren't really, the number of people who were dealing with that at the time. You had Facebook, and you had, I don't know, 5 or 6 other companies back in 2011 that were really operating at that scale. And being able to see that and be a part of it was completely invaluable experience that I still kind of draw back on today. And then SpaceX wasn't really so much about the scale of what you were building, because the overall workloads, they weren't consumer facing. They were really just internal facing and building rockets and scaling rocket software. But it was a very cool opportunity to work with cross-disciplinary teams and learn how you can build interfaces and services that work not just well for engineers, but also well for your non-software engineering counterparts.
Okay, I'd love to be, I want to say in mission control, but that bar scenario sounds very interesting to be kicked out.
That was pretty fun.
Oh, I'm sure that's an experience. I'm sure there's some content floating around about it. I might have to try to drum some up. Okay, you're at Caylent now. How did you get to Caylent? What are you doing there?
Well, I was at a startup prior to Caylent, and the issue with the startup was I was just brought on too early, because it was brought on to do kind of a developer relations kind of role, but the startup just wasn't quite ready for developer relations. I think the founders were doing a good enough job of developer relations on their own. And I didn't really feel that I was providing any value. So I wanted to kind of pop out and see what else was out there. I was actually planning on taking a pretty long time off. And then I went to reInvent. I went to Vegas, and a friend that I knew from actually a podcast I was on years ago, Mark McQuaid, he told me to meet with this other person named Stephen Garden, who was the founder of this company called Annika. And Stephen was like, okay, well, you have to meet the CEO of Caylent, who's JP. And so I ended up meeting them at reInvent, and then I did a little bit of back channeling, and I called up some of the customers that I knew and some of the people I knew that worked there. And Caylent has this unique ability to deliver a 9.7 CSAT score. So that's kind of unheard of in the professional services industry, where you have, customer satisfaction that high all the time. They have this really great space theme and branding. And I met with a bunch of the people on the team, and I was very impressed, and I was just excited for them. And then I chatted with JP, and I was like, how do I be a part of this? Where do I fit in? Like, let's figure it out. And we did. And so now I work at Caylent, and my kind of remit, my goals are to get us to premier status with AWS, to get us more AWS competencies, and to really just be a great place for people to work. I'm sure, as the talent industry, the talent right now, hiring is quite difficult, and people move around a lot. So I don't expect people to stick with Caylent forever, but I do think that if you're early career developer, this can be a great place to just get your cloud programming chops, get your cloud native chops, and learn how to go and do the things that you want to do. I think Forrest Brazil, he works at Google now, but he wrote this great blog post a couple of years ago about how everyone should work in consulting at one point during their career. And this is really my first time doing it. And I find the exposure to all the different customers is fantastic. You end up learning about all these different industries and how things work, and it's very exciting to build applications for different customers and see the end result of that, and see it deployed in the real world, in production, serving customers. There's this one customer, Schedulo, that does vaccine appointments all over the world. These are workloads that really matter. And I think if you're a young engineer or an early career developer, that sort of thing, you want to be exposed to those workloads, because, as Werner Vogels is pretty fond of saying, there's no compression algorithm for experience, and this is a great place to get experience. And my part of my remit is making it an even better place to get experience and share that experience.
I had the chance to work as a consultant early on in my career, and I think it provides you a different perspective on the unique architectures that are out there for various industries, going from like services and retail to marketing to finance. How you do things is completely different, but it provides you that experience. And I know you just quoted Warner Vogels, and that is, I knew you were going to say that, because there isn't anything to that experience. I do like your personality and what you're trying to do, and what Caylent's trying to do is like, you're saying that we know you might not stick around, but we're going to give you the best experience. And you know what? You're ultimately probably going to stick around, but we want to provide you that. So that's the way, I don't want to say an employer should be, but just that feeling, just that, welcomeness that, you know what, you might not be here, but you're going to enjoy it and you'll probably be here for the long haul.
Yeah, and I really like the space branding and theme too. We used to do, project kickoff, but now with customers, I want to rename the project kickoff to customer launch plan. And we had,
Nice.
this boot camp and training program, and I was like, it's going to be the Caylent cadets program, and we're just going to keep the space theme as much as we can. It's a little gimmicky, but I still like it a lot. It's fun. And I think with junior talent coming out of different schools and different programs, it's worthwhile to make an investment when someone joins the company and, hey, here's Git 101, here's, editor setup 101, because there are different personality types that are involved. Some people love to tinker with their environment and tinker with their tools, sometimes to the detriment of actually getting work done. I am certainly one of those people. I will tinker with my environment and my tools all day long. And other people, they don't care. They'll use Notepad++ and just write everything there.
Oh my God, that brings back memories. Okay.
So I think having a couple of base courses about networking fundamentals, hey, a TCP packet's 20 bytes, how do you set the maximum transmission unit on a server? Like why does Transit Gateway have a smaller MTU than say VPC peering does? Just covering all of this stuff as part of the onboarding and, having a discussion about it in small groups is great. And I love the idea too of, Calyans teaching Calyans, where there's an assignment. Oh, we're going to go off and learn about this for the week, and then we're going to present it back to everybody. So we have this internal knowledge transfer kind of program where people will talk about engagements that they've done. They'll talk about tools that may not even be directly related to AWS that they've used and why they like them or why they didn't like them. And it's the most fun I've had in a job since for as long as I can remember.
Caylent Cadets Fundamentals 101. All right. There's your class title. I want to jump into a couple of things because I know we have a list of items. You wanted to talk about like cloud native developer and the developer experience. What are you talking about there? Like what cloud native developer? Is that somebody just, I know how to do the cloud stuff, or what is it about?
So there's this interesting kind of discussion worth having that I think people are avoiding, which is what is the AWS developer experience overall, and how? Okay,
let's change the subject. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. Just kidding. You said avoid, and I was just like, well, let's avoid it. No, go ahead.
And how does it compare to other developer experiences? And it's very popular. It's a popular meme to say, oh, the AWS console sucks. I think that's, it's very easy to criticize, but why does it suck? And does it even suck? And in my opinion, it does not. I think the AWS console has had drastic improvements. I think the redesign is fantastic and they've made huge strides. So, the old AWS console from say 2012, that's a discussion worth having. But as developers, we're very prone to adopting opinions based on initial assessment and initial evidence, but then we struggle sometimes to go back and update that understanding and update that opinion. So I hated Chef for many, many years because of some versioning issues they did way back in, 2012 or something. And it was like, oh, I'm never using Chef again. I'm never using Opscode again. But that understanding was outdated. And when I went back and I tried it all out, and I learned, oh, Chef has drastically improved. This is great. I can use this all the time now. So when we talk about cloud native developer experience, Azure, Microsoft, they own many of the touch points the developers deal with in day out. Microsoft owns GitHub. Microsoft owns VS Code. They're the primary contributor to TypeScript. They own LinkedIn. So, you have this kind of incentive from GitHub and from VS Code pushing you towards Azure, but people aren't really using it. So why is that? And I think it's because the actual Azure developer experience is inferior to the AWS developer experience. And I'm sure that'll get lots of people telling me I don't know what the hell I'm talking about, but I do. I've worked across thousands of customers over the last decade and change, and my opinion is informed by my experience, and I'm quite confident in it. And if you disagree with me, you're just wrong. No, I'm teasing. If you disagree with me, I would love to hear, and I would love to kind of hear the specifics. So
actually, I do not disagree with you. I am on the same opinion set as you, but I use those same tools. But yes. I use those tools, but I don't use Azure. I use AWS because I like the tools that are provided for Microsoft for like Visual Code to access my AWS. It works. It's great.
Yeah. And I think that's fine too, is there can be multiple winners in this space. But when we go all the way back to the original question was, what is cloud native developer experience? I think we're at a crucial point in the evolution of cloud right now, where originally developer experience is what brought people to the cloud. It wasn't cost savings, it wasn't performance, it wasn't ease of use, it wasn't the mix. It was purely developer experience. A developer did not want to wait for an operational team or a colo to go and provision a server for them. They wanted to spin something up, host a workload, and get to work. That's what really got the cloud started. Now, of course, myriad other things input into that, and it became a positive flywheel and positive cycle, all this other good stuff. But we're at the point now where cloud has seen significant adoption. There are multiple competitors in this workspace. And I think we are at a point where the differentiator is going to come back to developer experience. And that's why I think it behooves AWS to invest significantly in improving developer experience across the board, because you can't just be good and you can't just be better. You have to be exceptional. And you have to maintain that high standard moving forward. And if first of all, if AWS doesn't do it and someone else does, then hopefully all of the other cloud providers are going to rise to that standard. But I do want to see us as an industry start improving our developer experience across the board.
I agree with you. And you were talking about the AWS console. I don't have a problem with it. I mean, I use it. I go into it. Yeah, it's grown to 210 plus services right around there from the original, 10. So obviously things are going to change a little bit. But I've tried using other cloud providers, and I didn't like the blades, the slide outs, and I didn't understand. It wasn't very intuitive to me as a person, but that's just my choice. I like the AWS console. It's just a better experience for me.
Yeah. And that's why when I see criticisms that are not specific of the AWS console, I'm always, is this an opinion informed by experience, or is it just the popular meme right now? Is it the zeitgeist? And you see it all the time on Hacker News and on Reddit and stuff like that. And I'm pretty tired of it. So I've started kind of chirping back, and it's a hockey term, chirping back, but I've started kind of chirping back and saying, well, why do you think that? What's wrong?
Exactly. Provide a little bit more data around it. So Randall, I want to talk about something I guess you're passionate about. We were talking about offline is the AI ML and the custom silicon. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. Okay. So I was in New York last night, and I had a conversation about this with some healthcare startups who are using AI and ML. And there's this, the ubiquity of deep learning is not really here yet. We use it every day. If you use a phone, you are using deep learning. If you have an Apple iPhone and you go and search for the word cat in photos, that's a local model running on the phone that's determining and tagging all the photos for you. Pardon me, just one moment. Sorry. So deep learning is in a lot of places, but it's not fully democratized. It's not as easily accessible. And it's really because training these real world production models can be quite expensive, especially at scale. You can do it kind of piecemeal on individual developer laptops or small workstations. But AWS has said something for a few years, which is very interesting, which is the cost isn't so much in the training, the cost is in the inference. And I've seen that borne out in the customer workloads that we've done. Inference ends up being the most expensive part. And what's very interesting now is silicon, the hardware on which we run our compute, is differentiating very quickly. NVIDIA is releasing new chips, ARM, new chips, Apple, new chips. Even Microsoft has their own chips now. Google has their TPUs. This custom silicon is fantastic and super, super powerful. However, the software is not yet at the point where you can take advantage of it. So take SageMaker Neo, for instance. This is the compiler built into AWS SageMaker that supposedly will compile your jobs for the specific hardware platform you were targeting. And they also have something now called the SageMaker Training Compiler. Neither of these things is capable of fully targeting the wide set of hardware that AWS offers. They can do a halfway decent job of it, but to truly take advantage of custom silicon right now, you end up having to write custom code, and you end up having to, do custom translations. And this is an area that is ripe for disruption. I think if someone can find a way, and I think PyTorch does a particularly good job of this, but if someone can find an even better way than what PyTorch is doing, of abstracting the underlying hardware and saying, I want to take advantage of the best possible operations that in hardware that this can happen on, so it is a training compiler, it is an AI/ML compiler, but it is intelligent enough to be able to rewrite models and rewrite code to take advantage of that underlying hardware. If someone can get that done, I think we're going to see pretty dramatic improvements. And I mean, if you just think about AWS infrastructure as a whole, there's been drastic improvements across the board over the last few years, and I expect them to continue.
Isn't this something similar to what they've done with Graviton?
Well, on the Graviton side, that custom silicon was not originally directly targeted at AI/ML workloads. For what it's worth, there are certain AI/ML workloads that will perform exceptionally well on Graviton. But there are other kinds of operations, that don't perform as well, because x86, you have this AVX2 instruction set, which are these large, 512 by 512 or even larger matrix operations that you can apply at a hardware level. And then there's like vectorized math libraries that you can use, like slibc or, that's probably way too deep, but there's all of this cool stuff that you can do in x86 that ARM still has a lot of this capability, but not all of the compilers that are out there take advantage of these capabilities. So you end up running code that is, it supports ARM as a compile target, but it doesn't actually use any of the underlying hardware. So that's one of the things with writing for Macs or writing for Apple hardware is difficult, because you have to leverage Core ML or some of these other frameworks to really take advantage of these M1 Max cores and things like that. But going back to Graviton, it's originally based on a acquisition that AWS made from Annapurna Labs back in a long time ago now.
I think it was 2015. 2015
Yeah.
2015 or 2018. No, 2018 was Graviton was released. So 2015, I think, or somewhere right around there. I have to check my notes. I literally just did a course on it. No lie.
Oh yeah. I mean, we worked with a couple customers recently where we ported this is not an AI/ML workload, just regular compute workload over to Graviton. They got a 60% cost savings.
Yep.
And then the spot market for Graviton is excellent right now too. So I don't know when this podcast will come out, but at the time of recording, disclaimer. At the time of recording, the spot market for RDS, for Graviton instances is exceptional. I mean, we've realized huge savings for our customers leveraging that.
Nice. Yeah, Graviton's definitely Graviton 3, obviously released in reInvent 2021. I'm sure there's going to be this year in reInvent, there's going to be some new additions. I'm not predicting Graviton 4. I'm predicting increase or some enhancements to Graviton 3 or some customizations are built on. There's always something new and happening. In fact, with all the summits that are happening this year, which is great, the in-person stuff, there's going to be more releases in my prediction.
Yeah.
My opinion is my own.
Typically the big releases happen at SF in New York. I'd love to see a little bit more love spread around. I'd like releases peppered throughout the year, which of course AWS does, but SF and New York summits tend to have the big releases. Also, one point about Graviton 3 is that it is actually in preview and very few people have access to it. So the reasoning, this is my uninformed, no insider knowledge kind of thing. If you think about how long it takes to do the foundry process for silicon, the bring up and all of this, Lisa Su from AMD has a great article on what that process is. But if you think about how long that takes, you end up spending 90% of the time waiting for robots to get reconfigured for the Silicon Lab bring up and then printing it all out. And then, even if the chip is already designed, it may not see the light of day for 2 years. So the fact that AWS releases Graviton 2, 2 short years ago and Graviton 3 in 2021, that's extremely impressive. And I think I now understand why it's in preview, because how the heck are they printing these out and getting them shipped everywhere? And I think they're probably a little behind on that. That's my guess.
I know they just released an instance for that. What was the C7G or something that was just released. So it's all in private preview. Maybe by the time this podcast makes out, it will be public. Who knows?
Yeah, hopefully it'll go GA at the SF Summit. Yeah. That'd be good. I'd like that.
Well, I'll tell you what. So Randall, will you be at SF or New York?
I'll be at both. Yes.
Same here. Looking forward to seeing you there. Randall, before we wrap things up, what are some of those open roles at Caylent that you're looking to fulfill? And I will include a link, because this won't go out probably for another 3 to 4 weeks. So I can include a link into some of those roles.
Right. So we're hiring across the board right now. I would say we have a cloud security team that is growing very quickly, and we have a lot of customer interest there. So if cloud security is of interest to you, we have a number of open roles there. We also have an open role or a series of open roles right now in CSAs. So these are kind of customer solutions architects or customers, success architects. We want folks who may not necessarily be hands-on keyboard day in, day out writing architectures and writing code. But they are able to deal with architecture and deal with, defining a statement of work for a customer. So there are also a number of other open roles across, HR and finance and marketing and just a ton of other cool things that we're working on. So if anything that I've said today interests you, if there's anything that you would like to do, please come join us. It's a lot of fun over here, and we're a fully globally remote company that, just has a good time.
And if anything else, take a look at the website for the cool space and quirkiness, because I liked it. And I think it just flows right up where you were with the SpaceX. I think it attracted you. It was like, oh, SpaceX. Oh, Caylent. Oh, I like this. Sign me up.
I do like the space theme. I'm not gonna lie.
That's all right. Nothing wrong with it. All right, everybody. Randall Hunt, VP of Cloud Strategy and Solutions at Caylent. Randall, I really appreciate you joining the show. My name's John Myer. I've been your host. Don't forget to hit that like, subscribe, and notify. Randall, before we close things out, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
No, thanks so much for having me. And it's great to be here, and looking forward to hearing more of the episodes. Hey, Alexa, turn off the lights.